Welcome everyone back to one final video about the 2024 season. What a crazy year it's been. I think I've heard everybody say it numerous times by now, but it was the biggest year ever for professional triathlon, and I hope you all enjoyed the video I put together recapping the whole season. It was so fun coming through like hundreds of hours of footage to put that together. I actually really love doing that. Hopefully it got you motivated for next year, but we're gonna save next year for the next video, and this one's all about handing out my awards for some of the top categories of our sport, and also, as I promised, going back and looking at my predictions for how I thought the year would pan out. So that's what we're gonna do to warm us up, to start off with that, and then we're gonna dive into those awards. And I spent a lot of time going over these, poring over the details, thinking through why I picked each one. Please do debate me down below on what I've chosen and let me know yours, of course. So my 2024 predictions, I had Gustav Iden would bounce back, and I think I got this one mostly right. And I say that because he had some decent results running up into Kona, and then he was being considered as a contender for that race, and that for me is good enough considering where he was the year before. Unfortunately, we all know that he DNF'd at that race, so that spoiled the comeback party a little bit, but I'm actually kind of glad because I think this has made him even more fired up to get back into it for 2025. So I'll give myself about a 75% on that one. Next one then, I went with short course athletes would come up to the middle distance and dominate, do really well. And I think 70.3 worlds in Taupo really sealed the deal on that one, with all three short course athletes taking the podium on the men's side, Jelle, Leo, and Hayden there. And of course, we've all seen how well Julie Duran's done. And there's quite a few other names I could mention as well, but I think that one's a pretty much slam dunk. Then on to number 3, I thought run records were gonna fall this season, and I got this one about half right because I expected this more on the men's side, but it actually happened on the women's side. I thought Patrick Lange was gonna take down that 2:30 marathon, but it was actually Anne Haug who broke the women's marathon, which I said in that video was not gonna happen. The women's side, the marathon record would be extremely hard to beat. Probably one of the best things of the entire year. So don't forget that she went 2:38.52 there. And then Julie Duran also broke the 70.3 run with a 1:12. So yeah, that is not what I expected. So I'll give myself about 50% right on that one. Next up then, I went PTO versus Ironman, the two new series, who would win? I gave this one to the PTO, T100 as we know it now. I think it was closer than I thought, so I'm not gonna give myself 100% on this one. I think Ironman did a better job than I was expecting, and I actually think T100 lacked in a couple areas that I thought they were gonna excel in, and that for me was the season narrative. I thought it was kind of all over the place with athletes not fulfilling their contracts and that big grand final race being canceled, which meant that a lot of athletes were short on points. Plus then we had Olympic athletes coming over, which, you know, it just made things a little bit confusing. And I think if they had to put together a Netflix show on this whole year, well, that would be pretty tough for them. So just giving the edge to the T100 still because of their awesome broadcast commentary, because they really do have the best racing each other consistently, whereas the Pro Series is a little more spread out per race. And I also do think the Pro Series and their season narrative is still worse than T100, so they've got some work to do on that. Next up then, I had Sam Lalo doesn't win Kona. I got this one right, but I did say that he wouldn't get away on the bike, and that would be the reason why he'd lose it. And as we know, he certainly got away on the bike, but that's what caused him to lose it in the end. So I'll give myself 75% on that one. Then the next one, I was totally off. Injuries. I thought there would be a ton of injuries this year with how many races athletes were planning to race, and it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. Kat started it off pretty bad in Miami, tearing her calf there, and then Lionel with his self-inflicted rib injury from swimming too much. There was a bunch of sicknesses. Lucy Charles got injured, but it wasn't massive like I thought it was going to be. Maybe I'm missing a few, if you can remind me, but definitely going to give myself a no on that one. Then I thought Lionel would have a sublime year, and again, this one started off like I was going to be right. He crushed it at Oceanside, but unfortunately, when his season was all about Kona there and having a rough go at that race again. It's hard to say he had a great year. And then last two, I thought there was going to be some big rule changes, which did happen pretty early on. We got more rules about fairings, as well as the bottles down, the shirts were no longer an option. And then we had PTO change the penalty times. Finally, I was celebrating about that one. Ironman definitely needs to follow suit, and I'm going to keep beating that dead horse. I hope you guys do as well. They need to drop those penalty times down a little bit. And then finally, my last prediction was Lucy and Jason would win the T100 Tour, and they absolutely did not. Don't know what happened to Jason this year. Totally fell off the radar, and I'm not sure he's even going to be able to compete in the T100 next year. But now that we got that out of the way, we're warmed up, it is time for the awards. But I wanted to say first, before we jump into it, a huge thank you, which I didn't say in the intro. It has just been a great year for me in the Daily Tri, and it's all thanks to you. And I never thought I would get to meet so many of you at various events, and I never thought I'd even get to travel to these events with this channel. And so yeah, just thank you so much to everybody who's ever met me at a race or shot me a message or left a comment. It really does all add up. I mean, gotta go to the Olympics this year, gotta go to Challenge Roth with my dad and coach him to race there. All these things were just dreams when I started. So yeah, really excited for future goals with this channel. I think next year I'm going to focus a little bit more on quality videos over quantity. I'll still try to put up the highlights, as I know a lot of you love those, so I'll still try to focus on those. But yeah, for now, my plan is quality over quantity and some of these side projects I've got going on. All right, now it is time for the awards. Let's dive into some fun ones first off. Surprises of the year. This one I have to give to Christian and Gustav. Christian, for the fact that I really expected more. I really thought he would have a good shot at the Olympics, but I was so surprised at how far off he was, and then how well he was doing at Frankfurt just right afterwards. I thought it was just crazy how off they were in their training, especially knowing Olaf and the history they've had together. I was just surprised that they miscalculated by that much. And then, of course, I have got to throw Gustav in here because of both of their bike positions leading into Kona and the changes they were making ahead of that race. It just seemed like something that doesn't go with Olaf and being so scientific in the way they've done it before. The second one then is Tomas Rodriguez and that doping scandal earlier this year at Ironman Texas, for a couple reasons. One, I didn't think this would happen so soon after Colin Chartier the year before. I thought we'd have to wait a couple more years before an athlete would get caught. And the second was that it was an in-competition test, which is super rare for athletes to get caught with one of those instead of an out-of-competition test, because usually they know how long it takes to get out of their system. So yeah, it's going to be crazy when he comes back, because he's fully planning to, and you know, will stand by his innocence till the day he dies. So yeah, that was the second biggest surprise. Third biggest surprise was a fun one. World Triathlon Cup race in Levin, France. It was this indoor triathlon that just fueled my fire with how big of a spectator sport triathlon could be. It's this stunning track with this pool in the middle, and they had some really good athletes racing there. It was a show, and I'm so glad they're bringing it back this next year. You have to tune in for it. Next up then was video of the year. This one's so tough, and I'd love for you to let me know some down below, because I am just obviously in love with videos. But I've got to give this one, you know, I'm a little bit biased here, to Youri Kulin and the video he made of practicing grabbing water bottles. This one had me in stitches, and I think a lot of you as well. So I've got to give this one to Youri. It's just humor and as well as high quality, and that is the perfect match. The second one then is a lot more heartwarming, and this is a recent one from World Triathlon of Luisa Baptista running again after she was hit by a motorcycle over a year ago. She was training towards the Paris Olympic Games, and it was just such a tragic story. She spent 100 days in hospital, so to see her here again running with her teammates just brought the biggest joy to me. And if you want to know more about her story, I'll put a link in the description to a PTO video about her. I just absolutely love. And then the third one then goes to Sam Laidlow and the editor who put this one together, basically mocking Jan's commentary of his choice not to wear a sweatsuit like everyone else at T100 London.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
And then category number 3, this one's another fun one. Try kits. I love seeing new kits come out, but recently I feel like they've been a lot more bland than before. A lot of athletes choosing to go with just a simple white kit, obviously just preferring the performance gains over the colors, but that's why I've gone with Martin Van Riel as my favorite kit. Now, we've seen this before in the past, but I saw it again up close this year, and I was just blown away by all the little things on his kit. He's got some smiley faces on there. He's got some really interesting font for his name, and yeah, I think it's just the best colors out there. You always know where he is. At number 2, I went with Dennis Chevreau. This one, a lot more classy look. Just love the white, black, and red together. Really think this is a cool one. And then finally, I've always got to throw Paula Findley's kit in there. Love what they come up with each year. It's just really classy, well designed, and yeah, I think they've got a good one as well for next year. Next category then is unlucky / blunder of the year. This one I've got to give to Hayden Wilde for a couple reasons. First one being his 70.3 Worlds performance there was so good, but just he could have eased off on that run. He didn't have to go out so hard. And, you know, you never know what could have happened, but he even kind of admitted that that is what happened. And unfortunately, wasn't able to win it in his home country. I think that is really tough, especially after what happened in Paris, but also for the fact that he crashed at the mixed relay and took out Pierre Lecour, who I'll also add to this list. And Pierre came 4th at the Olympics, wasn't able to get a medal there, and then was taken out of the opportunity to get one in the mixed relay by Hayden, who crashed into him. And I couldn't think of anything more unlucky for the guy who probably would have got a medal with his French team at that mixed relay event. Then the last one I'm giving out an award for, this one is Kyle Smith, and his deciding to turn around at the T100 San Francisco race after he threw his water cup. Definitely, in my opinion, didn't need to do this, and with how close that race got at the finish, that might have ended up costing him those few extra inches. As I'm editing this, I realized I forgot one huge blunder, and that was T100 Miami, not having any lights out on the bike course for the women. What a terrible way this was to start off their new tour, but at least everything else after Miami was much better.
He is well in control. You can see the soft lips and the gentle gaze. That's not an athlete that is really struggling.
This next category is for most memorable season. Who are we going to remember the most from 2024? I have given it to Taylor Knibb. Obviously, she just dominated the T100, dominated 70.3 Worlds, but the fact that she raced 3 events in the Olympics was just incredible as well. Unfortunately, the time trial didn't go so well. Just the fact she got there is amazing. We could go on and on about her, but I've done that a lot this year. Next up, I had Kat Matthews, taking home over 600 grand worth of prize money and the contracts from the T100 after tearing her calf in Miami, like we said earlier. That is just unbelievable, and what a good person too, such a good role model. So yeah, kudos to her for pulling that off. Gregory Barnaby on the other side of the Pro Series as well. What a year he'll remember, just from being consistent and taking his opportunities. When I saw him at Ironman Cairns, this was definitely not on the cards, and he actually decided to race Frankfurt like pretty last minute. So yeah, amazing that he pulled that off. Martin Van Riel, Jelle Gaines, kind of 50-50 for me as well on this list. Jelle especially, I knew he'd be good at middle distance, but just how good he got by the end of the year was sublime. And beating Martin Van Riel and Hayden Wilde, I think just gives him the edge to me over Martin. The next category then, a tough one, performance of the year. I'm combined both the men and the women for this one, but I'm gonna do a versus on this one with my top 6 performances and see which one I pick, because for me, the Olympics, both those wins were just the top. And we had Cassandra on one side winning a home Olympics. It's just been so strong all year, managing to defend it. And then we had Alex on the other side with a last-ditch comeback that was so unreal. It still gives me goosebumps to this day. And because of that, I have to just give it to Alex, because yeah, he was down and out, and we didn't see that comeback happening. So yeah, Alex takes that one for me. The next one then is a Laura Phillips win in Nice versus Patrick Lange in Kona. And this one I've gone back and forth with multiple times, but I'm just gonna have to give the edge here to Patrick, because I mean, he broke the Kona course record in the process. He looked untouchable crossing that finish line. He beat pretty much all of the top guys, you know, they were all there. Whereas Laura, there was just that question mark of Anne and Lucy not being able to race, although I think I agree with most people saying it was Laura's day no matter what that day. And then lastly, I've got, this one was a hard one, Hayden Wild's WTCS Grand Final win in Ponte Vedra versus Anne Haug at Roth. I gave this one to Anne because of that insane marathon at the end. Plus, breaking the overall iron distance record was just unreal. She was on another planet that day. But Hayden's win there at the grand final was such an unsung race this year. I mean, just a breakaway win like that. Backing it up with a solid run to beat Alex Yee. It's a huge, huge performance. So that's one I definitely want you to chime in on down below. But I wanted to give an honorable mention to two other special performances this year, and that goes to Talbot Cox for taking on Andrew Messick head-to-head, beating him there at 70.3 Hawaii, as well as the new CEO of Ironman, Scott DeRue, competing his first 70.3 while taking on the new job of this pretty much billion-dollar organization. That is super impressive. So yeah, kudos to those two, had to mention them. Next up then, I've gone with the event of the year, Olympics easy, nothing comes close to this one. Just unreal, and I would 100%, after being at this Paris one, book your accommodations now, schedule it on your 2028 calendar to be there at the LA Olympics. There's just something magical about it, and it feels huge, so you've got to be there. Roth for me, easy second. After being there 2 years in a row, it got even bigger this year. I didn't think that was possible. Their expo literally went 2 stories higher. It was insane. And then finally, I've given it to that World Triathlon Cup race in 11 just because of how special it made the sport of triathlon look. And yeah, I think there needs to be a lot more of those. Last few categories then, most improved. Easy one for me, again, Julie Duran, number 1. That second place at the Olympics kind of came out of nowhere. She never performed that well at all in a WTCS race, let alone the Olympics. And then, well, we saw how well she did jumping into the T100 races. Trevor Foley then gets second place for me. That Lake Placid result was mega. Pity he couldn't follow it up at Frankfurt, but the real shame was at Kona when he crashed his bike just coming into T2 in such a good spot. I really wish we could have seen what he'd done there. But thankfully, he's super young and hungry, and he'll be back. And then finally, I gave it to Carolyn Pohl. She really stormed onto the scene, taking that 70.3 European Championship ahead of Kat. She'd be a great addition to watch at the T100 next year. Next category then, I'm calling Best Follow, who was pretty entertaining on what they did this year, and I have to give this one to Lionel Sanders. I mean, that Kona series was on another level. Talbot did such an amazing job. I know all of you were riveted to it like me, but I also think the rest of the year, it was just on another level than it has been before. All the little things he was doing at the beginning of the season, that whole unknown of whether he was being coached by Jan was pretty fun too. So Lionel takes the win here for me. In second place then, I went with Ari Clow. I thought his Australian method videos at the beginning of the year were spectacular, and I just couldn't wait to see more. I thought it was so fun that he took the risk to go and do that, and the work that he put in was insane. So yeah, it just makes me want to see other pros doing and documenting stuff like that. And then lastly, I gave it to Sam Long. He is just such a character. Seeing how much the sport means to him, especially in his grand final Dubai interview, that was really heartwarming. And looking forward to seeing him again on the T100 Tour. I'm glad he made that choice to keep working on his weaknesses. Next up is Young Guns, the young ones who impressed me the most this year. At number 1, I went with Emma Lombardi. She's 23 years old, French triathlete, got 4th at the Olympics, which is always the forgotten position, the worst position at the Olympics. But for 23 years old, that's so impressive, and she was so consistent all year long. So she definitely gets this one for me, and you have to keep an eye out on her name because she's one of those super, super talented athletes we'll see for years to come. Speaking of Rico Bogan, he really impressed me backing up after a 70.3 Worlds win. He took it to another level, was able to compete with the likes of Martin Van Riel on the tour, and yeah, I think he surprised a lot of us this year. And He is 24, and when you compare that to Martin Van Riel's 32, yeah, he's got some years to catch up, and I think he's going to be challenging for titles for years to come. And it's exciting to hear that he is super interested in doing Kona as well. Last one is Panagiotis Batados from Greece. He won all his middle distance races this year. Lightning quick runs, but he seems to have really leveled up his bike this year. So he is one for the future, maybe even the T100 next year. And then last category is underrated athletes of the year. Number one, I went with Alanis Siffert, a new name I hadn't heard of before. Just really stepped up in the middle distance this year. Won most of her races, even beat Ashley Gentle in one of them. So I think another name to keep an eye out for. It could be in the T100. Benito Lopez then took a second for me here. His win in Ironman Victoria, as well as his World Triathlon long distance win there, were just so special. I think this guy's going to fly under the radar in either the Ironman Pro Series or the T100 Tour next year. He could do either one. He's that good. Lastly, I've gone with Leonard Arnold, who I think will be a big contender for the Pro Series next year. Unfortunately, he DNF'd in Kona, but he had an excellent lead-in of races to that race. He got second at the 70.3 European Champs after not being able to eat for 3 days before the race due to a gut infection. So he's definitely got the legs and the arms on him, and yeah, one to watch. And with that, we've done it. Handed out all the awards. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. Please let me know yours down below, and we will see you for the next video all about 2025, and I'm so excited. Thanks everyone. Have a great new year.